I'm feeling ignorant, I'm feeling real ignorant. Pretty girls rocking pearls, trying to get intimate.
What is going on? Do you want to replace your wheel bearing? Do you know if your wheel bearing is bad or not? Well, watch this video and I'll show you how to diagnose a wheel bearing, and I'll also show you how to replace it on my 2004 MK or Mark IV Volkswagen Jetta. Now, some of the things you want to worry about is humming noise, but humming can be a whole different thing. It can be caused by winter tires. So if you don't have other symptoms, it might not be your wheel bearing. So the first thing that you want to check is simply starting up the car and seeing what lights are up. Obviously these lights are on, but I'm actually gonna turn the key, and it's gonna have the seat belt light. But as you can see, I have my ABS light on. Now ABS can be brakes, but in this situation, wheel bearings and ABS lights have a lot in common, because there's a ring that goes around the inside of the wheel bearing which can cause the sensor to be off, and if it's off, it's going to put your light on. That's one way to check. So here's the wheel jacked up off the ground, and if you can see here, I don't know if you can see, but it's got all these flat spots here. If you just keep looking, a huge deal of flat spots here. And no, I know what you're thinking too is, oh, Pete, you're just pulling your e-brake, that's why. No, I'm not. I'm going to show you the other side here. This car is on the ground, but as you can see, this tire, no flat spots. So you want to look for the flat spots, or not just flat spots, because depending on if it's the inner bearing, outer bearing, stuff like that, it's going to wear a lot differently. But for this, we can tell. So you want to grab your tire and you want to shake it and see if you hear any noises. Now, if I do it this way, it doesn't shake, because the caliper and pad are on this side. But shaking it this way, it doesn't stick to the caliper. So you can see and hear that this wheel bearing is what we would call condemned, and we're going to replace it. And I'm going to show you guys how, so stay tuned. So what you want to do first is you want to take off this hubcap cover. Just like that. Then there's going to be 5 17 stud nuts. So I'm going to put that on. I'm using air tools. You can get these air tools, Snap-on. You can find that at any hardware store, anything like that. So we're going to go on and take this tire off. Okay, so now the tire's off. So the second thing you want to do is you want to take off the caliper. The caliper is on there with a 8mm Allen key. So let me get you guys in here and show you what it actually is. It's this bolt right here that the caliper's on. I'm going to leave that in there because I still need to do the bottom one. There's a little bit of dirt stuck in the Allen key hole, so I'm going to take a smaller Allen key and take the dirt out. Okay guys, so I just stepped out for a little while. I got the caliper off. So all you have to do is get off this caliper. You don't have to get off this bracket with the slide pins in it. So now we're going to remove the rotor. Also what I did was there was a screw. It's a Phillips head screw. I took my impact driver and I hit it off because it happened to be seized. So apart from that, we're going to continue on. So this is a little bit of a hard part where you want to grab some kind of pliers to get the cap off. These worked great. It's just typical pliers. It's to take off your grease cap. Sometimes if your grease cap's seized on, you want to hit it with a strikeable flathead screwdriver and it should get it off. So next thing we're going to do is there's a 30mm 12-point socket and we're going to spin that off at the impact. If you do that with a 6-point, it's unfortunately not going to work. So we're going to get that off now. For this application, you want to get rid of this, but you're going to have to reuse it. I'm going to have to reuse it. This bearing, you can even hear the sound of it. It sounds terrible. It needs to be replaced. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a 3-jaw puller. I happen to have one. If you guys don't have one, you can rent it at your typical hardware store. So you want to spin this around so that you can see that it's evenly around on it. You also want to wear some safety protection to make sure that you don't get any fragments in your eyes, because essentially when you pull this off, this bearing is going to break and the race is going to be still stuck on the shaft. So now that we have the bearing in 2 pieces, you can see the bearing balls in here. It essentially just broke it. So not only is this wheel bearing bad, it's fit for the trash. It can't be pressed back in. And also on the shaft here, don't be fooled by this. Some people actually think that this is part of the shaft, and they actually will press the new wheel bearing on just to find out that the race is still on the shaft, and then they'll have to pull the new wheel bearing off to break their perfectly new wheel bearing. So don't forget to get this off. It's a key thing. Now there's a couple ways you can get this off. You can take off this hub. There's 4 bolts here, and then you can bring it down to a shop and get it pressed off. Or you can get a puller that has 3 prongs of fine teeth that will go in back of this race and pull it off. Unfortunately, I don't have that. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to cut this with a grinder very gingerly and make sure that I don't hurt the shaft. This race is really pitted. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to try and cut this, and we'll be back. Guys, I am so sorry. I got a problem with what happened. As soon as I broke out the grinder, my camera's memory, it filled up. So I went to check. Once I got the race off, I went to check the camera and it didn't have it. But I'm going to show you guys what exactly did happen. So when I took out the grinder, this is the race here. So the race was on here pretty much really tight. And focus. And what I did was I kept grinding it in a crisscross pattern. And then I took my chisel and I took it and I hammered it. And if you guys can actually see here, I actually cracked it. And then when I cracked it, it slid right off because there was no more of a press. And also, take a look at the shaft. This right here, this very, very small lines, that's actually from the chisel when I was hitting it off. But if you can see everything around here, I didn't hit anything at all with the grinder. Now you got to take your time. I didn't use a Dremel. I used a pretty big grinder. I think it's a 4.5 inch wheel. So I'm going to start getting the bearing back on, and we're going to be putting it back together. Like I said, again, I'm really sorry about that. It's just I didn't even... The only reason why I actually did check my camera is because I had the race off and I went to wipe my hands, and good thing I caught it. But I'm really sorry, guys. Alright, so we're back. Just took a little bit of a break. Had to go down to the store. It's dark out, so I'm just using some ab-natural lighting. But now we're at the part where we're going to put the bearing back on the shaft, and I just got this. I want to do a big shout out to Prime Choice for making me pay full price for this wheel bearing. Wheel bearing comes like this. It doesn't even come with a new dust shield. It just comes with the bare bearing. So we're going to put it on, and you want to put it on. Just put it on a little bit, and when it gets to that point, you want to hit it on with a hammer. But don't hit right on a hardened surface. You want to hit it with like a block of wood or anything that won't damage it. So I'm going to hit it with my wood and mini sledge. And it seemed to have seated pretty good. Now I'm going to put the nut back on, and this 12-point nut needs to be torqued to 129 foot-pounds. I'm not 100% sure what that is in Newton meters, but you can go on Google and do the conversion. So now I got my torque wrench. I dialed it in to the proper foot-pounds. I'm putting on my 12-point 30mm axle nut on this adapter because it's really a 3/4 socket because it's so big. But I'm just using the adapter, it makes no difference. And now I'm going to torque this nut. And yes, I'm not putting it on with the air tool because one, it's not going to give you the proper torque spec, and two, it's too late. And now it's torqued. And I did a moving torque. You never want to just put it on and click it. You always want to move it, let it click. And now the assembly for this is pretty much the same as the disassembly. Now we're just going to put everything back together how it's supposed to be. Like I said, Prime Choice is cheap parts, but they don't give you everything. Like this wheel bearing kit should have came with a new dust cover, and the even more high quality kits will even come with an axle nut. I don't recommend you to reuse your axle nut, but for this application I had to. Now we're putting the slotted rotor back on. So I didn't take the whole thing off, as you know. Now I got the screw. I'm going to put it on, and it's going to keep the rotor from popping off next time I have the tire off. I'm putting it on with an impact driver, but I'm not going to hit it and impact it on because that's just silly. Sometimes it's also a good application to put some anti-seize on, but I think that I'm not going to have this off ever again, so I'm not going to put the anti-seize on here. So those pads are on there, and whoa, the boot's a little damaged, but this ain't a tutorial video on how to replace your caliper, so we're not replacing it. But we are going to put this back on like so. Make sure that you give it a little bit of persuasion, and it should go right on. And these are a 13mm. I know everything has specifications, I know they're there for a reason, but I say, it's your car, do what you want, really. Now, I put the e-brake cable in, and I'm putting this other clip in. It's just a pinch clip. And that's just to keep the e-brake cable from moving and all that jazz. And as before, you saw me earlier take off this with the Allen key. I was only able to get the top off because the previous owner stripped the inside of this. And also I realized you don't even have to have this off to change the wheel bearing. So that was that. Now we got the caliper back on. We got the dust cap on. We got a fresh new wheel bearing. It seems to turn pretty freely. And now we're going to put the tire back on. Torque it to 89 foot-pounds. Now I also wanted to get a shot of my tire that I am going to be putting back on there, but as you can see, all these flat spots are caused from a bad wheel bearing. Since I don't have a whole lot of money, I'm going to keep this on till it needs to go, and then I'm going to replace it with a new tire. But if I keep driving it like this, it's not going to wear out my wheel bearing or anything like that. It's just going to make a like a humming noise. So we're going to put it back on. Snug it up, and then I'm going to torque it to 89 foot-pounds. Video helped you, make sure you like, you subscribe, comment down below if you have any questions, comments, concerns, and thanks for watching.